Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. Today's episode is presented by SimTurf. Transform your business, home, or even your garage into a golf oasis with the absolute best synthetic turf services for golf sims, putting greens, and hitting mats. Visit www.simturf.com for more information. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you, as always, to everybody out there for watching, for listening, following, subscribing. I do appreciate you all very, very much. Training camp for the Buffalo Bills almost over. Plus, the depth chart was dropped on Wednesday for the first time, their initial preseason depth chart. I'm joined right now by good friend, someone who's become a recurring guest to this podcast, one half of the Buffalo Sports Collective, my guy, PK, man. What's going on, dude? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Football's right around the corner. Got a bunch of fantasy football leagues kicking off. The weather is not like you're sweating as soon as you walk outside. It's been a perfect week, and I'm ready for some football this weekend.
It feels like a sweet spot right now on the calendar. Like this is probably my favorite time of the year. You mentioned that hasn't been too hot, which you're right. But even if it was, still my favorite time of the year. You get into August, it's almost always nice out. The Erie County Fair's kicking off, which is kind of like the unofficial summer's getting ready to end pretty soon. 10, 11 days, whatever it is at the fair. And of course, Buffalo Bills preseason football getting ready to go. And we're going to talk Bills camp. They just wrapped up. We're recording this on Wednesday, their second last practice. Final practice Thursday. Many of you are watching this or listening to this on Thursday. It'll be the final open practice to the public at St. John's Fisher. I will actually be there on Thursday, so I'll have plenty of firsthand observations for Friday's show. So we'll talk some storylines that continue to develop from camp. We'll talk depth chart, initial impressions, which of course you got to take all those with a grain of salt. Before we get going though, I was on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, early Wednesday morning. And again, we're recording this on the 7th, so I want to make sure that the date is correct. And that's for a reason. Didn't realize this until it came across my eyes on Wednesday morning. 32 years ago, on this date, August 7th, 1992, the Buffalo Sabres swung a trade, which at the time wasn't a big deal. I remember the trade, too. It wasn't met with a lot of fanfare at the time, but ended up literally changing the fortunes of the franchise. Jerry Meehan, the Sabres general manager at the time, on this date, 32 years ago, traded Stefan Bergeron, which I could barely even pronounce how much he stunk, and a 4th-round draft pick, which turned out to be Eric Days, to the Chicago Blackhawks for a young prospect goaltender who had only played in 25 games up to that point, had a little under a 900 save percentage. Dominic Hasek. What a trade, dude. This turned out to be one of the best, forget the Sabres. This is one of the best, most lot for the team that he goes to, one of the best trades for a team of all time. Do you agree with that? Let's start there, man. 32 years ago today, you give up a 4th-round pick and sorry to say, but kind of a scrub, and you end up getting Dominic Hasek.
Yeah, I mean, I got his jersey literally right there. But yeah, I was 3 months old at the time, so I don't really remember this. But but yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest lopsided deals possibly in sports, not just hockey, not just Buffalo Sabres, not just Buffalo. It could be one of the most lopsided deals. It ended up being one of the most lopsided deals in sports history. I mean, you didn't really know it at the time. Like you said, he was a young goaltender growing up, but he was one of those players that I grew up wanting to be like. I say the story all the time. I was in my parents' basement. I dressed up and I tried to emulate what Hasek was doing on the ice and my roller skates in my parents' basement. He was he defined the position and he played it in such a way that, not very many other goaltenders do. And it was really impressive that the Buffalo Sabres saw something in him. And I don't think they ever envisioned him taking off the way he did, but my God, did they get a little bit of a steal in that trade right there.
Yeah, well, the Sabres, I'm sure they didn't envision him becoming what he did. And I can promise you the Chicago Blackhawks didn't as well. It's not like the dude was a bum either, like with Chicago. Again, he only played 25 games. He didn't have a great save percentage, but I actually looked this up. I didn't know this offhand. I had to look this up, but he had a 13-4-2 record early on in his career with Chicago. 2.58 goals against. Not too shabby. I'm trying to think in my mind for perspective, what would be a trade? And I know, there's a lot more Bills fans probably listening to this today, at least anyway, than Sabres fans. I'm trying to think, and I didn't think of this until just literally now, but like, what would be the equivalent of a trade today that would, that you would be like, all right, how the Bills, well, I don't even want to say Stephon Diggs because he was only here for 4 years. They gave up a first round pick. It would be the equivalent of, for perspective, I think if the Bills were to trade before he became a star, Justin Jefferson, I know they gave up a first round pick to Minnesota and ended up drafting Jefferson. But let's just say if the Bills traded for Justin Jefferson before he popped, like maybe he got hurt his rookie year and didn't play much, and the Bills trade for him, and then the next year he becomes literally the best receiver in the NFL, one of the best players in the NFL, may end up going down as one of the great wide receivers of all time. And Brandon Beane gives up a 4th round pick for what becomes Justin Jefferson. Kind of feels like a semi-accurate comparison, you think?
Yeah, I mean, even if you wanted to relate it, Buffalo sending somebody out, it could be like a Josh Allen after his rookie year where he showed some promise like Hasek did, but sending him out the door for a young package, and then the team that gets Josh Allen, absolute steal because he goes on to become one of the best quarterbacks in the league. If you want to look at it that way, that could be a semi, a comparison to what Buffalo did getting Hasek would be, trading Josh Allen after a rookie or a second year, saying, okay, yeah, there still could be something there, but we'll take the gamble that he's not going to develop.
It's wild how a low-key trade or a low-key draft pick can make or break a franchise. Look at the Denver Broncos right now. The Denver Broncos took Bradley Chubb instead of Josh Allen. John Railway just recently, I think it was on Part of My Take, he kind of lamented this, calling it the biggest mistake that he made. Just imagine if the Broncos were the one who took Josh Allen. Now, you got to assume that Josh Allen would still be the same quarterback in Denver. Who knows? The system, the personnel, the coaches around him, if it works out the same. But it's just those moves, that one making a move or not making a move or pulling the trigger on a trade that don't seem like a big deal. Those ultimately are moves that could make or break a franchise. By the way, real quick side note, Jerry Meehan is everyone thinks with Sabres GM, you go back to Darcy because Darcy was like the GM for a billion years, it felt like. But Jerry Meehan was a pretty underrated Buffalo Sabres GM. I mean, he got Hasek here. He got Alex McGillney, defect to the Buffalo Sabres. He pulled the trigger, got the Pat LaFontaine trade while he was still GM. He's in the greatest Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame, so it's not like nobody remembers him. But yeah, man, good on Jerry Meehan, the architect of, without question, the best Buffalo sports trade in history to really help the Sabres out during that time. Speaking of, by the way, before we get into some Bills stuff, today's Sabres, PK, what is a common denominator with pretty much every good free agent out there, with every good veteran available, maybe via trade that's got a no trade clause? Is there a common denominator between all these high key, high profile free agents and veterans out there that could be traded that have no trade lists? What's that common denominator? This is a rhetorical question.
Winning. And winning.
Wanting to come here. Wanting to be a Buffalo Sabre, right?
Oh, yeah.
They don't come here voluntarily. Well, it's kind of nice to see from a Bills fan perspective to shoot me on the other foot right now with the New England Patriots. For years and years and years, the Patriots are a dynasty. They win all these Super Bowls. Buffalo Bills are a little baby sister to them. It's It's frustrating. And now you get a little bit of rejoicing in the fact that great players don't really want to go to New England because, by all accounts, several reports, as we record this, by the way, I got to put that out there on Wednesday because this might not drop by the time it drops. Maybe something happens. But Brandon Ayuk, the framework was in place. The Patriots had a big offer. The 49ers, New England had something in place. And Brandon Ayuk said, nope, not going there. I won't resign. So the deal falls apart. Little bit surprised that New England was such a big player for Brandon Ayuk and that ultimately he just decided, I want to win, or I want to go to a team with a better quarterback or more established quarterback. I ain't going to the New England Patriots. It's weird to say that, but that's the reality right now.
Yeah, I mean, you saw a glimpse of that after Brady left where Bill Belichick really couldn't get players that really wanted to go there. And I think it's going to take a bit of time for Patriots to kind of correct that. If Drake May ends up being a legit quarterback, there'll be players that want to go there. But until that point, they don't really have an established, offense, established quarterback that will take those players to the next level. So it's not super shocking when you look into it, even though, they went 15, 20 years of players taking discounts to go play and chase a ring with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. But seeing a player like the style and the talent of Brandon Ayuk, looking at that situation going, hey, I could take a ton of money here, but I'm not going to win much unless Drake May pans out. He must think that either Drake May won't pan out or he doesn't want to wait for that to happen along with the pieces around him. So it's when you look at the whole grand scheme of things, it's not shocking. But when you think about the last 20 years, it is a bit shocking that nobody wants to go there.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And again, I want to be a little bit careful because this could, even though we're only recording this a handful of hours before it drops on YouTube and maybe less than 12 hours before it drops on the audio side here, but because he could end up being traded by now.
Right.
But as we record this, I'm following the situation real close because the two teams now that are rumored to be most in the mix are the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. And those are a pair of teams right now that I would definitely tear underneath the Buffalo Bills, especially Pittsburgh. But you go get yourself a Brandon Ayuk. That is the AFC just keeps getting better. One of those two teams, if they get Brandon Ayuk, a legitimate, bona fide, in my opinion, number one receiver, you're in business. The Steelers, if they land Brandon Ayuk, I like a lot about that team to begin with. They're in business. And especially the Browns, if it's not Amari Cooper, going back in some kind of package with the Browns. If they got Cooper and Brandon Ayuk and Nagaju at tight end and a great defense and returning Nick Chubb, that's a pretty goddamn scary team too. So, this does affect the Bills in a way because whoever it seems like he's going to go to an AFC team, at least that's the way it seems as we record this. This affects the Bills indirectly. This affects the Buffalo Bills as well.
Yeah, I'm not super afraid of Pittsburgh just based on, their quarterbacks. And then you got Arthur Smith there, who's more known for the running game than the passing game. He would definitely improve the offense and be more of a threat in the passing game. But unless they change the type of philosophy and mindset that Arthur Smith is bringing and the mindset that Mike Tomlin loves to coach, I'm not super worried about that. The Cleveland, on the other hand, like you said it perfectly, if Amari Cooper is not involved in that deal, they are a bona fide terrifying offense because their defense is already scary. If Deshaun Watson can be near close to what he was back in Houston, that offense can match that defense and be absolutely a headache for that division and for the AFC. So I've been seeing that any deal that Ayuk goes to Cleveland, I would assume that Cooper's going back out the door, but if for some reason they don't work that out and Cooper stays in Cleveland and they work out the money there, that's a very scary, scary offense.
We just talked a few minutes ago about the Sabres making one of the best trades in sports history, acquiring a, legendary goaltender, arguably one of the best 2 to 3 goalies in the history of the game. Conversely, the Cleveland Browns are not that far removed from making what may be the worst trade in the history of sports.
Oh, yeah.
What they gave up and all the money, the guaranteed money that they gave up to be able to acquire Deshaun Watson. And it makes me think, especially, I almost feel like this already, but if you're really all in, and you go get Brandon Ayuk, and you find a way to keep Cooper, and you move some money around, whatever it is you got to do, man, oh man, there might not be a player in the NFL, including Josh Allen, including Burrow, including anybody. There's not a player in the entire NFL that could and should have more pressure on them to be good than Deshaun Watson. Because if Deshaun Watson is good, like I said, I'm not going to buy that he is. I personally think he's shot with everything that's happened. But pressure, you want to talk about pressure, man. There's not a player in the NFL that's going to have more pressure on their shoulders, I think, than Deshaun Watson right now.
Oh, 100% with the money and the talent around him. If he doesn't win, and they're tied to him for years to come, it's going to get ugly in Cleveland.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so training camp for the Bills on Wednesday. By the way, if you don't know this already, PK Phil, Buffalo Sports Collective, we talk about it a lot. They got a great podcast, solid Bills coverage, really solid Sabres coverage, but more than anything else, known for their Buffalo Bandits coverage, is by far the most unique and in-depth coverage that you're going to get anywhere in the podcasting game when it comes to the Bandits. I bring that up because I don't know which players were there, but I know there were a couple Bandits players at camp in Rochester on Wednesday carrying around that NNL Cup, or NLO Cup, I should say, around the football field. A lot of players were taking some time to appreciate that. So the cup was on hand, the championship that the Bandits won on hand at practice on Wednesday. In my notes that I sent you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Chris Swenny. He's the one that has the cup right now. They pass it around all through the summer. So each person and, member of the organization gets some time with it. So I knew he was bringing it to practice. And then it was Dane Smith, Josh Byrne, and Ian McKay that brought it there. I think Swenny's at the Erie County Fair now with it. I think I saw the post of it, but yeah, it's making its rounds this summer. That thing's been taking a beating this summer, and it's not a shock at all based on how much partying they've been doing after 2 championships.
So it's like hockey. It's like the Stanley Cup then. Players get some time with it and they do whatever they're going to do with it. So cool, man. That is so cool. But anyway, yeah. So that was at practice on Wednesday. Who was not at practice for all of Wednesday was Dion Dawkins. Shortly before we did this podcast, I was getting ready to be a little bit concerned. I'm like, no reports on him being injured and stuff. But a release came out or whatever to the team that him leaving practice with trainers. He did leave with trainers on his own power, and that was tweeted out there by several media people. It was personal, not injury related. But I will say something, and I want to get your take on this. It's starting to concern me a little bit here. We already know about the safety position, the injuries and stuff. That is obviously a concern. But I was at camp on Monday, and DaQuan Jones did not practice. It was listed as a personal rest day or a veteran rest day, but he also did not practice on Wednesday. And he is day-to-day with a groin injury. Now, look, the season is still several weeks away. I don't give a shit if DaQuan Jones plays one snap in the preseason. Who cares? You know who he is. He's an old dude. He's a veteran. He knows the defense. He don't need to be out there risking his health. But I will say, I'm not going to lie to you, and maybe you disagree. I'm starting to get a little bit concerned. I mean, this has been a great player for the Bills, but injuries have been a factor for him now. He missed the Bengals game, the divisional round loss, because of an injury. He obviously missed most of last season after tearing his pec. And, we're just a couple weeks into camp. He haven't gotten a preseason game yet, and he's starting to get limited and missing time with a groin injury, man. I'm not going to say maybe worry is a strong word, but my radar's up on DaQuan Jones. Kind of feel the same way.
Yeah. I mean, when you deal with a player that is 33 years old going into the season, you definitely want to treat him with kid gloves and make sure that he's as healthy as possible. But when he's already getting injured or nursing some kind of nagging injury, it's not good going into the season. It's never good to have any players going out, but especially when a player has a track record of being injured. And I know that this is a different injury than he dealt with past, but when you're dealing with an injury like that and factor in the age and factor in, okay, is Ed Oliver really the same type of player when DaQuan Jones is not next to him? And there's been track record to prove that he's not the same player when Jones is not next to him. That's more worrisome to me than DaQuan Jones being hurt, is how that affects Ed Oliver and his possible, take it to the next level season, because all through camp, I've been hearing good reports about Ed Oliver and he's just blowing up the line and he's going to have a great season. But if DaQuan Jones isn't next to him, can the offensive line and the offensive schemes take him out of the game and you don't have to really worry about him? So that's my bigger concern, is less about DaQuan Jones's injury and more what it does to an Ed Oliver.
I know people constantly think I'm an Ed Oliver hater, and they're going to probably think even more so after me saying this, but look, Ed Oliver always looks good in training camp. Ed Oliver always blows up plays in training camp. Ed Oliver always looks like he's ready to be an all-pro defensive tackle in training camp. And Ed Oliver has several games during the season where he does the same thing. And then you get a little bit of all right, it's time for Ed to go away for a couple games and kind of be absent, and don't even get me started on playoff losses. But anyway, look, I'll say this much about the defensive tackle position. And I've been to a couple camp practices, and it's a position I've been following very closely. I feel much better about the depth at defensive tackle this year than I do last, even though there's a rookie. But I'll tell you what, you want to talk about an impressive rookie that nobody really is talking about, because it's all about Keon Coleman, Cole Bishop before he got hurt, maybe even Ray Davis. I like what I've seen from Dwayne Carter a lot. I think he's going to have a role right away. Austin Johnson is a good depth piece. If Deshaun Watson makes his roster, I personally think he'll probably get cut, and then he comes back in a practice squad, kind of like Poona Ford, kind of, I guess we'll say, from last year. But anyway, my point is this. I think that position is in much better shape right now this year than it was last year. Had some good name players last year, but Tim Settle didn't give you anything. And I'm talking about behind, of course, Ed and DaQuan. You didn't get nothing from Tim Settle, really. You got even less than nothing from Poona Ford. Jordan Phillips, can never count on him. Couldn't stay on the field. Too many dumb penalties. Splash play, though. He'll make some plays. I'll give him that much. But aside from that, and then Laval Joseph got off the couch. Maybe he should have stayed on the couch because he didn't really do anything for the Bills last year. This is a position that I do feel good about. I don't feel good about DaQuan having a bad groin already, though. But this position as a whole is one of those positions where I really think they improved over the offseason.
Yeah, I think the defensive line as a whole might be deeper in the most in recent years, because I've been seeing good reports on the edge, and Von Miller looks like old Von Miller. Hopefully, knock on wood. It's still training camp. I want to see what he does in a real game against, legit competition rather than just Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins, which there's no shot at either of them, but you're going against the same guys over and over and over. You pick up some tendencies, especially when you got Von Miller's knowledge. But yeah, the depth on the defensive tackle, it definitely seems like it's deeper than past years. It's definitely deeper than last year, at least on paper. But like you said about Carter, he's not getting a ton of, coverage. But I think a lot of that has to do with, one, he's a third round pick, but two, defensive tackles, unless you're a guy like Ed Oliver, doesn't get a ton of name recognition and a ton of coverage there. But I guess if you're tying up space for an Ed Oliver or for guys on the line, you might not get the same, recognition or coverage because you're not making those big time splash plays. So if you're not hearing his name, that could be a good thing.
I'm here with PK from the Buffalo Sports Collective, going over some Bills camp observations as training camp winds down for the Bills in Rochester. Look, at the end of the day, when it comes to veterans, injuries is always going to be the biggest thing. If somebody's out that concerns you, you want to know, is it a vet rest day? What's the extent? Is it an injury? What's the extent of it? How's this player looking like coming back from an injury? Like, say, Matt Milano, who, by the way, by all accounts, had a pretty good practice on Wednesday, looked good in pretty coverage. So you could tell he's slowly, and I kind of seen a little bit of that Monday. He wasn't very active, but every day he seems to ramp up just a little bit more. Again, another player, I don't need to see his ass in the preseason for like a second. Just want him to stay healthy, and he's still got several weeks to ramp up. But from an actual football side, something that's a little bit alarming to me, and it's happened on Wednesday at practice, James Cook. Look, this guy to me is kind of an enigma because he is a great athlete. He'll make you miss. He's got a low-key, underrated ability to kind of run through a tackle as well. He's been prolific at times in the passing game. He can do a lot for this football team. He was 4th in the NFL in rushing last year, 7th in scrimmage yards. He's a good player. But, man, unforced, and you know what? That's too generous of a word. Bonehead mistakes that James Cook just straight up makes. It happened at practice Wednesday twice. He dropped a pass, which I saw him drop a pass on Monday too. And then he had another pass where he caught it, and then it ended up getting knocked out afterwards. It would either be an incomplete pass or a fumble. They were saying that probably could have been ruled if they would have reviewed or whatever, a fumble. Point being, dude's having a hard time holding on to this football, and that to me could be an issue. I don't care what his stats were last year. If you remember, he spent a good chunk of last season kind of, I don't want to say in McDermott's doghouse, but that leash was pretty quick to get pulled on him when he would make a mistake. I remember that Denver game, he had a fumble, which was actually just a great play by Denver, and he sat out for like 2 straight series. Meanwhile, Gabe Davis has a pass go right through his hands. Gabe Davis was right back the next series because McDermott trusts Gabe Davis. Did not feel that way about Cook. You got an exciting rookie kind of like lurking over you a little bit. Not a good day for James Cook, and this is something that he better figure out because, I mean, the touchdown drops last year, as good as he was, they were bad. And kind of seeing more of the same already at camp this year.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest talking points this offseason for us is just, will he work on that part of his game? And it doesn't seem like that has improved much. Now, maybe that changes in preseason if we see him at all. Maybe that changes early in the season. But through training camp right now, it looks like the same old story that it was last year and the year before that. I don't know why, and I don't know how it is, but you said it perfectly with Ray Davis right behind him. I'm not saying that he's on a super short leash because Sean McDermott, not just Sean McDermott, but a lot of coaches, they have more trust in their veteran pieces than they do the young guys coming in until the young guys prove that they can have that big role. But if you can't rely on a guy like James Cook, where we're not totally sure what this offense is going to look like under Joe Brady, and based on last year, they relied on James Cook a ton down the stretch. If you're not able to rely on him to, 1, make catches, or 2, secure the ball and don't commit turnovers, maybe you see a run with Ray Davis as we get into weeks 5, 6, and 7. If you continue to see the same things from James Cook, if Ray Davis can be a good, reliable blocking back there during passing downs and can roll out and make catches and secure that ball, could he steal some snaps from James Cook early? Ty Johnson's losing ground because he's hurt. He's not showing enough because, he hasn't stayed on the field this training camp. So Ray Davis seems like he's taking advantage of those roles, running with it. And if he can squeeze some more snaps out of James Cook and prove that he can be that reliable third down back, maybe he starts stealing some, drives from James Cook, and maybe James Cook's role gets reduced because you got to be able to trust your running backs to secure that ball, because those turnovers, like Sean McDermott proved in the past, it's going to get you in the doghouse and sitting on the bench.
I want to tell you and people out there watching and listening, quick story from camp on Monday. So there's a portion of practice where they break off at one point and they go to one-on-ones, and it's stretched over 3 parts of the field. To the far, so I'd be looking out to the field this way. So to the far left of the end zone was O-line, D-line doing one-on-ones. I didn't really pay much attention to that. The far right side was one-on-ones between receiver and DB. And I know everybody was pretty much fixated on that. And I watched that, a little here and there. But like around the middle of the field was pass rush with linebackers and DBs blitzing off the edge, and the running backs had to block one-on-one, with the coach standing there to get to the coach. And like James Cook wasn't even out there for this drill, and like Benford, the locked in Russell Douglas, the locked in starters didn't partake in this drill, but Ray Davis did, and I was really focused on him because I know for him to get on this field, he's going to have to show you to get pass block, and he had 1 rep. Dorian Williams had an outstanding rep, and Dorian Williams just kind of bowled through him and got to the quarterback relatively quickly, but he probably had about 6 reps out there total. Ray Davis, I'm talking about, pass blocking. And I thought he looked good as a whole, minus the 1 rep. like I said, where Dorian Williams beat him. But aside from that, I thought he looked really good. I remember one where Cam Lewis was blitzing, and other, it might have been Hardy or something. He just quickly locked them down. But anyway, I say that because I'm practice on Wednesday. I'm part of like this text chat group with people who are someone he's always at practice, and we're tweeting out each other's or texting each other our thoughts. And Ray Davis, by all accounts that I saw, had a really good day again at pass blocking and picking up blitzes. I get to this point because I'm starting to see a role for him already on this team, that Latavius Murray role from last year. Latavius Murray played a lot when the Bills were throwing the ball over James Cook because they trusted Latavius Murray to be a pass blocker. Plus, he could do some things out of the backfield. Now, Latavius Murray, old as hell, hit a wall at the end of the year, and he was kind of a shell of what he was earlier in the season. Understandably so. Ray Davis is young. He ain't going to be that dude. I'm starting already. My vision for this offense will be sure Cook will start, but what we just talked about, and especially if he's going to drop passes or put the ball on the ground, you might see a lot more Ray Davis than just an occasional third down Latavius Murray type. But even at worst, the more Ray Davis could show that he could pick up the blitz and pass block, the more this kid is going to get on the field a lot.
Yeah, and what's also working in his advantage is, yes, he's a rookie, but he's an older rookie at 25 years old. He's the same age as James Cook. So it's
sure.
I think a little bit of that also factors into it, how much he's played in college and in the past. So I think he's not going to be treated as much like a normal rookie coming in because of his age experience in college and playing for as many years as he had. So being a older rookie might actually benefit him. Yes, he's way younger than Murray and has a lot more juice than Murray, but he's still an older rookie back that could prove himself on the field and be like, hey, I'm not one of these like 21, 22-year-olds in here. I have a lot of experience in this running back role. I can take this and run with it. And I just need that opportunity.
One other thing I wanted to hit on from practice directly involving an individual player, and this is the other side of the football that really interests me, because up until Monday to an extent, and now, especially now, I'm starting to wonder a little bit, PK. So I practiced on Monday. The Bills ran 11 on 11, and the first time offense versus defense first team, Kyrie Elam was out with the ones, not Christian Benford. And my mindset is, well, that's interesting. I feel like maybe that's a tip of the cap to Kyrie Elam for the hard work he's putting in and looking good early in camp. And maybe it's a little bit of a gentle reminder to Christian Benford to say, hey, man, don't get too comfortable. You know, this isn't your spot. It's not written down in Sharpie right now. Stay sharp. You know, that was my mindset. And then Benford went out. The second time they went out was Benford and not Elam, who played with the ones. All right. Fast forward to practice on Wednesday. 11 on 11, first set. Rasul Douglas is out there, which he's been out there the whole time. And it's Benford this time. But the second time they go out with the ones, it's Kyrie Elam and not Benford who's out there with the ones. I thought there would be a 100% chance that Christian Benford is your week one starting corner. I still feel like Christian Benford is your week one starting corner, but I'm not willing to write that down again in Sharpie or say 100%. I'm starting to wonder, through all the good reports of Kyrie Elam looking good at practice, and I've seen a couple firsthand myself and thought he looked good this year, much more consistent than last year. I'm starting to wonder, man, do we got a battle brewing right now between Christian Benford and Kyrie Elam? Is this not set in stone that Christian Benford is your starter?
I think going into camp, it was set in stone. And I think they really were ready to give it to Douglas and Benford. And I think Elam has just pushed their hand and said, hey, he's still here. And at this point, it's almost weird because he was a former first round pick, but you're going into it like, is this house money? Did we find another potential cornerback that can play outside of Rasul Douglas? And if that's the case, and you got three corners that you can rely upon and trust out there in that situation, great problem to have. But I definitely think it was that they went into camp fully expecting this is Benford and this is Douglas's job out there. And anything we get from Elam is just a bonus. If you can rely on him to be that guy that can go in there and give him a few reps, or if there's an injury, we can count on him maybe 1 or 2 weeks. But if you're actually seeing him push Benford for a starting job out there, it's like I said again, it seems like it's house money, which is weird for a firmer first round pick. But maybe this change on defense with Bobby Babich taking over the defensive coordinator and a different coach in that room, in the DB room, maybe that's all Elam needed. Maybe he just needed a new voice in his ear to give him that confidence that he could still do this, because he was good in college. He came out with a good pedigree. It was still in him. He just had to get it out of him. And maybe, again, I want to see in real game scenarios that he can keep Sam's to himself, but it seems like there's a big I still give the edge to Benford, but I think Elam's making their job to determine who's going to be the starter out there a heck of a lot harder.
My realistic goal for Kaiir Elam on day one in training camp was show me that you could be Dane Jackson. Right. Show me that you could be a strong number 3. And if something happens to Douglas or to Benford, the floor's not going to fall out when you got to come in the game and play a series, a half, a week, maybe a couple weeks, whatever it may be. That was my goal. Show me that you're Dane Jackson. I can feel Dane Jackson level comfort with you. I feel like the goalpost has changed for me a little bit. Now I'm feeling like my realistic goal is, will Kaiir Elam push? Can he push Christian Benford over the next couple of weeks? I'll tell you, I think there are different types of players too, PK.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Kaiir Elam's lengthier, more aggressive. He's more of a playmaker. Like, he'll make a big play. He'll get the picks. He'll also get beat, though. He'll make the mistakes. Christian Benford is more of a kind of like a higher floor, lower ceiling, sticky type player, really good in coverage, good tackler, steady, dependable. Kaiir Elam, not that, but Kaiir Elam ceiling is higher. He has really, really good ability. It's just fun to see. We heard a little bit about this last year, and it just never came to fruition because he played great one day and stink the next. I'm telling you, everyone I've talked to, and from the few practices I've been there to, Kaiir Elam has been maybe one of the most consistently good players on this team during training camp.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest issues, is he would have such low practices and low games, but then he would flash and you see the talent that's there. He just hadn't been consistent. Maybe it just takes 3 years for him to do that. But like I said, he definitely is showing that he has the higher playmaking abilities out there. And, he could get burned, and then the next play, he could jump the route and get an interception and completely redeem himself. But Benford is like that steady presence out there where you would kind of expect him to be that with a lower draft pedigree. But, it's like I keep saying, it's a good problem to have. I don't know which side I'm leaning, because Douglas can make those cause turnovers as well and get those picks, and he's known for it. So would you rather have Douglas over there and a more steady Benford, or would you like to have the playmaker of Elam out there? I guess maybe it depends on the scenario in game of who you want out on the outside. But if Elam can keep pushing Benford, he might make Benford go sit on the sidelines, because maybe they're going to want more playmaking and turnovers on this defense to help the offense while they're still trying to work out kinks on that side of the ball.
All right, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you in part by SimTurf. Transform your home or business, hell, even your garage, into a golf oasis with SimTurf's premium synthetic turf. Since 2001, SimTurf has become the industry leader in supplying turf to many of the top names in golf, including TrackMan, Callaway, TaylorMade, Ping, the Golf Channel, just to name a few. And that's for good reason. They provide the absolute best synthetic turf surfaces for residential and commercial golf sims, putting greens, hitting mats, and indoor-outdoor tee lines. I have the Easy Tee hybrid hitting mat for myself from my homemade golf sim, and I couldn't even imagine right now hitting off anything else, from realistic feedback on good and bad shots to comfort to durability. It is the perfect hitting mat for me. If you're serious about building out a quality golf simulator, nothing's more important than turf, and no one does it better than SimTurf. Visit their site at www.simturf.com, and you can get 5% off any order Use promo code Talking Buffalo at checkout. SimTurf, simply the best. I really liked your last point, by the way, on Elam and Benford. And maybe beyond just competition, it could become a matchup thing. Like there might be certain scenarios, certain matchups, certain parts of the game, need to turn over something like that, and Elam might be the guy more likely to get you that. You go with him. So that's a really good point. It's fun to follow, though. It's fun to see a healthy competition, and just quite frankly, it's fun to see Kyrie Elam start to thrive in some capacity, at least, because I ain't gonna lie, I wrote him off as a bust. So maybe he's not, and we'll
You're
see.
not alone.
No, I know I'm definitely not alone. One other camp note too, interesting. These players right now, they're playing for their lives. This camp means zero to so many veterans because they're the only thing they care about is staying healthy, getting through it, getting yourself in a little bit better game shape, and that's all that matters. For other players, every practice could be life or death. Trying to make this team. I was at camp Monday, and I'm telling you, I was just a handful of feet away where Andy Isabella went down, got hurt, grabbed his leg, was in a lot of pain, carted off by the trainers. Now, that could be a little bit misled too, because if you're not familiar with Rochester's field and the way it's laid out, it's a long ass walk from the training room, the locker rooms, to campus, to the field. So it wouldn't be that uncommon for a cart to have to come get you if you got some kind of leg issue. Still, point being is this: back out of practice on Wednesday. He can't afford to miss practice. He is probably on the wrong side of the roster bubble to begin with, and missing practice would be, that would be like a nail in the coffin for Andy Isabella right now, because in part, one of the guys that he's directly competing with, KJ Hamler, had a good day at camp. Now, I saw a clip. He dropped a pass too, a bad drop too. But all in all, another good day for him. And kind of leading us to talking about the depth chart right now. The Bills put out an official depth chart, although I strongly advise everyone to take any depth chart that comes out before the first preseason game. Take that shit with a huge grain of salt. But there are a couple things that kind of popped at me a little bit, and one of them is KJ Hamler is listed number one as the kick returner and punt returner for Hardy right now. KJ Hamler, kind of like somebody we really didn't spend a lot of time talking about in our chats here on this podcast, but hey, man, dude's got a realistic path, or so it seems right now, to this roster.
Yeah, and he's a former high draft pick as well.
Second
if I remember
rounder,
correctly, from Denver. Yeah,
Yep.
He's finally healthy. And with the new kickoff, which we finally got to see last Thursday, because I'm one of those freaks that actually watched part of the Hall of Fame game, that kickoff, it could cause a lot of headaches for a lot of teams. And if Hamler can be that creative guy back there, that's a way that he can make the roster. Same with Isabella, same with Hardy. There's a lot of positions that are open because of this new kickoff rule. And you mentioned Isabella trying to get back on the field. That might be his only way to get on this team, is to beat out Hamler for the kick return. That might be Hamler's only way right now. So like you said, every single snap and every single rep these guys are getting goes on the coach's mind, and that goes in the notebook. And when it's time to make these cuts, those are the first things that people are going to remember. So Isabella, like you said, he can't afford to miss time here, especially with how well Shavers is playing, especially, how well Hollins is playing. I think Hollins was pretty much a lock to make this roster anyways, sure. But there's players that are stepping up, and you can't miss time because you're going to end up getting forgotten. So there's just a handful of spots in kick return that could be a way that it's probably either Isabella or Hamler if Hardy doesn't win it. So it's going to come down to these preseason games. And if any of these guys pop in that return game, it could lock up them a spot on this team.
I wouldn't buy stock at Eddie Isabella making this team.
Yep.
He's a good candidate to be on the practice squad. I think he could clear waivers. I think he would definitely be on the practice squad. KJ Hamler got a shot. I still like Hardy a little bit more though, but we'll see there. I just think that was interesting. By the way, you said you watched some of the Hall of Fame game. So you caught a couple kickoffs. I completely forgot. I did not watch a single second of the Hall of Fame game. Do you get a sense, based on even if it's just Hall of Fame preseason shit or not, that kickoffs could be a little crazy in the league. I have no idea how it's gonna play out. I'll start to see a little bit of it on Saturday because I will be watching, of course, the Bills game. But I don't know, man. Kickoffs going to be different this year, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, if you get past the first wave, you're home free. You're only going to have the kicker to beat. It's going to be absolutely nuts the first few weeks. I don't think there's any time for them to work this out in preseason. I don't think you're going to see what it truly is going to look like until week 3, 4, and 5 when the special team coordinators actually figure it out. But there could be some big time home run kickoffs, and then I can see the teams just going, okay, there's been 5, 6 kickoff returns already this season. Let's just boot it out of the back of the end zone, put it where it's going to start off, and now have to worry about, okay, are they going to return this one and just go all the way for 7? So I think it's going to be another interesting element of the game, and you're not going to be able to go use your bathroom break during that time. You're going to have to wait till halftime.
So Terrence McGee would have thrived in the 2024 NFL is basically what you're telling me right now.
It's actually exciting now.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say the casual Bills fan who might glimpse at take a little bit of a glance at the depth chart might be like, what? Keon Coleman? He's not starting. Matt Collins is starting. Well, again, if you watch camp or if you know how this team works, not surprising. A, Keon Coleman is going to be just fine. Trust me. B, Matt Collins, I'm telling y'all, been saying it, he's going to have a role on this team. He signed, I'm like, all right, there's your Trent Sherfield, maybe a little bit better than Trent Sherfield. I don't believe that anymore. I think his role is going to be more than what Trent Sherfield was. I think he's going to be a core special teams player, but I think he's going to be involved in this offense. He has been productive a lot at camp. I noticed on Monday during practice, after practice was well over, almost everyone else was off the field signing autographs, going back into the locker rooms. Matt Collins was out there working on some routes with Mitch Trubisky. Matt Collins has looked good. He's earned that spot. He could block well. The team trusts him. Again, I keep going back to that word trust. But again, don't fret it. Keon Coleman's gonna be just fine. He's looked good. He's gonna be a red zone threat. He's gonna get some run during games. He'll just be fine. But don't go expecting Keon Coleman to put up Stephon Diggs. You were foolish to begin with if you ever thought that. But Keon Coleman ain't going to have Stephon Diggs type production. He's not replacing Stephon Diggs. Matt Collins has earned that spot for now, but Keon's going to be just fine.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones where if you're just a casual fan, you're seeing this and just going, how did Coleman end up there behind who the heck is even Matt Collins? Matt Collins. I agree with you. I think he's going to have a bigger role. I don't think it's going to be anything special, but I think he's going to have moments that pop this season. He's going to be a guy that you can rely on in a pinch if there are injuries or if something's not working. He can be relied upon there. He's going to be a big special teamers, like you mentioned, but he's definitely a guy that you're not going to be able to sleep on. I think he's going to be. I think in the end, Coleman will have better numbers through the whole season than Hollins will, but I don't think Hollins is going to be the guy that puts up 20 receptions for 250. I think he could be a guy that's 30, 40 receptions for close to 400, 500 yards in this type of offense if they truly do spread the ball around like they're planning on doing.
It's worth noting that 2 years ago with the Raiders, Matt Collins had 690 yards receiving. So he has been useful in the past. He was not useful last year with Atlanta. Atlanta had a plethora of really skilled receivers and god-awful quarterbacking, throwing him the football. He was pretty much relegated to a special team player last year, and so really didn't do shit. But he has it in him. And I like what I see from him in camp, and I know Josh Allen is a big Matt Collins guy. Like I said, those are the things that kind of popped on the depth chart. Nothing else really besides that. I keep going back to the rookies having to earn their trust. Cedric Van Pran Granger, a 5th-round pick center, who I think a lot of people had this, which now looks like fantasy land projections that maybe he might come to camp and push Connor McGovern to be the starting center from week 1. I'm here to tell you that's not happening, so forget that. He's actually 3rd right now on the depth chart. They got Will Clapp ahead of him at center on the depth chart. I'm not down on Granger whatsoever. I'm just saying it's going to be a slow burn with him. He ain't getting on this field I shouldn't say ain't because you never know, but he's a long way from being the starting center right now, PK, is what I'm telling you, man. He's third on the depth chart. That's at least notable.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see by the end of camp if he's able to push for that backup center role. And I think that's what you're kind of hoping for the Buffalo Bills. I know there's people out there hoping that maybe he could push McGovern and push McGovern back to left guard. But if he can push and be that backup behind him, and if something happens, he can be relied upon to go and be that center, it'll be it's good depth to have, especially with that late of a draft pick and that guy. And you even mentioned it on your show when I was on a while ago, Eric Wood absolutely loves him. And if he can develop and be that good time backup centerman that down the road can develop into that starting centerman and push McGovern back to left guard, I think you're really just hoping for him earning that backup center role by the time camp breaks.
Yeah, Leal Collins is a second string left guard right now. I'm still not even confident he's going to make the team. He's been banged up through summer camp. Apparently, he practiced Monday, and it's funny because I was going through line combinations. I remember tweeting him out, and he wasn't even on the second team. I don't know. He seems to me like a guy who's a perfect practice squad candidate. We'll see. I think Alec Anderson is going to be that backup center / guard / tackle. Your backup Ryan Bates, basically. I think Alec Anderson plays that role. Your 6 offensive lineman who comes in jumbo packages like David Edwards did last year, Bobby Hart did 2 years ago. But for now, anyway, Collins is ranked, he's put up on the second team depth chart. We'll start to get maybe a couple answers on Saturday. Let me ask you this as we get ready to get out of here. The Bills have a game on Saturday. Yay. They're at home playing the Chicago Bears. Who's going to play? We don't know. What starters play? By the way, as we record this, nothing's been announced. Maybe it will be Thursday morning. Sean's going to speak early before practice, so you might have some answers by the time you're watching or listening to this. But as of now, we don't know. But I suspect some starters are going to play, especially guys who aren't cemented in as starters. But between them, backups competing, certain positions, what are like 1 or 2 things, since you're going to be forced to watch a preseason game involving the Buffalo Bills, what are a couple things that you're kind of interested in seeing yourself?
Well, the top one's still the kickoff. I think that's going to be a fun part of it. But if you're looking further than that, Granger versus the Clap battle. I think that'll be a fun battle to watch. Who's going to be in the rotation behind the Miller, Rousseau, and Epinesa? Who's going to be that next guy that flashes and kind of that takes over for the Floyd, takes over for the Lawson, takes those snaps there? Who is Bobby Babich going to be the one that making the play calls up in the box? It's seeming like it. I still don't think they've made an announcement of it, but with him being in the box, I think everybody speculated that he's going to be the one that's making the calls. So is he the one that's going to be radioing down that, or is it still going to be a shared? Is it still going to be Sean McDermott? So there's some interesting things. The wide receiver battle. How much time are they going to get out there? How does Shavers flash? Is he able to earn a spot in this 6 wide receiver role? It's definitely going to be a very, for the freaks that like this kind of stuff and the depth battles, it's going to be a good game for this. And that's why I'm almost rooting for the starters not to play, because I want to see those depth players, especially on a team where, the wide receiver room behind a few of them, we don't really know who's going to be the 3, 4, 5 guy. I should say the 4, 5, 6 guy. We don't know who's going to be the backups on the defensive and offensive line. So there's a lot of things that are going to be working themselves out. But, I'm almost rooting for, most of the starters not to play, not just because I want to see some of the backups, but for health wise too. I do not want one of these starters in the first drive to go out whatsoever.
No, me neither. I don't want to see. I would be good if a starter didn't play a snap the whole entire 100%. Preseason. It's going to happen, but that would be my hope. I kind of go in between, because in some regards, you're 100% right. You're like, this battle is going to be fun to see how it plays out. Who looks better, this and that. Sometimes I don't think it matters. I'll give you last year as a perfect example. Last year, we were talking about a potential Benford versus Elam this year. Last year, it was going to be Bishop in the mix and Edwards, and those guys are out. So who knows how that plays out. But anyway, last year it was Terrell Bernard versus Tyrell Dodson. Bernard didn't really do shit during camp. Then he literally didn't play during the preseason, yet he was the week 1 starter. And I'm like, what are we doing here? And then, a quarter and a half into a week 1, I'm like, well, that's why he's the starter. I get it now. But my point was you didn't get any of that from watching him in the preseason or even during camp. So sometimes it don't end up meaning nothing. But there's three things that I'm kind of interested in the most for Saturday's game. And I'm going to preface this. I'm probably going to repeat some of the shit tomorrow when I'm on the show, or Friday as well. One, I think this is a great chance if he plays and I think he will, Damar Hamlin to kind of maybe solidify for now that number one free safety position. Show that, hey, I'm capable. You got Bishop out. You got Edwards out, which I talked about this on the show a little bit yesterday. I watched Edwards, and he was kind of walking around pretty gingerly. I'm no doctor. Maybe he gets better in a couple days overnight, and he goes from, walking right to running. But he didn't look like he was going to be ready to play anytime real soon. But Damar Hamlin could come out and have a really good chance to kind of put a stranglehold for now on the free safety position. I think ideally Cole Bishop was not going to be the starter anyway if Hamlin or Edwards looked ready. I don't think Sean wants to give the keys to a rookie at safety right now. But anyway, it's a good opportunity if he plays for Damar Hamlin, so I'll be locked in on that. The wide receivers, of course, bottom half. Look, first four set in stone. Then it comes down to, for me, three receivers. Shavers, who is at a really good camp. Hamler, who could be the kick returner. That does matter, and he's flashed some. And MVS, a guy who I was incredibly high on, who's been kind of quiet during camp, although he's been heating up a little bit lately, because I think the team knows what they're going to get. But anyway, you got three guys there. You got one receiving spot for sure, possibly two, depending on if the Bills keep 5 or 6 receivers. Worth noting, last year they rostered 5. Everyone's assuming 6. Last year, camp, cuts, 5 receivers. Those 3, one of them's making the team for sure, maybe 2. I still have a hard time saying if MVS is only going to be your 5th receiver and has no special teams value, does he make the team? I don't know, man. Chase Claypool, the injury, I think, has really hurt his opportunity to show the team what he could do. I think he's missed 6 straight practices now. So I don't even include him for the time being in that mix. Justin Shorter's always hurt. So sorry, I want to like him. He can't see on the field. So I've already dismissed him. So to me, it's Shavers, Hamler, MVS, 1, maybe 2. And then the last thing, this tight end, Zach Davidson. I want to blow him off, but I can't because every time I've seen him, he makes great plays. He looks like such a good pass catcher. But I just refuse to believe that the Bills would keep a third tight end with no special teams value like Davidson over Quinn Morris, who's a core special teams player when you already lost Matekovic. You already lost Saran Neal. So I feel like Quinn Morris is making this team. Do you keep 4 tight ends? I don't buy it. But if this dude flashes and pops during a preseason game, I might start buying in.
Yeah, for Hamler, I would be very surprised if he plays in this one just based on all the injuries for the safety room. I wonder if they would almost hold him out to avoid that type of injury. Just on the off chance, just like, hey, he's been looking good in camp. We've seen him in the past. We kind of know what we're going to get from him. I'd rather hold him out and just get the other guys healthy before we roll him out. The wide receiver room, like you said perfectly, I think MVS and Josh Allen are close. From all the reports, it sounds very close. But when it comes down to it, does Schaefer offer more than MVS does at this point? Yes, if MVS goes out the door, it's costing you as much as if he was on the team. You're not making any savings whatsoever because it's 2.25 whether he's on the team or not. So right. Can Shavers make up that difference in that department and earn a spot there and be the 5 or 6 guy? But like you said, last year they kept 5. They could possibly do it again. And then with Davidson, he seems like maybe he would be one of those guys that flashes and then earns value around the league. And maybe that's a guy, because we always see Brandon Beane do it with the offensive line. Maybe there's a team out there that could value him as a pass catching tight end that could keep him on the 53. So if he has a really good camp and Buffalo just doesn't have a spot for him, they might be able to swing a deal knowing, okay, we're not going to be able to get this guy down to the practice squad because he doesn't do much on special teams whatsoever.
You know what, dude? You're pretty good at getting in some of those sneaky, low-key, really good points. It could.
Never heard that before. Don't tell my wife.
Yeah, man. It's low-key. It's a little thing I'm like, you know what? Yeah. Nothing about that. Maybe Davidson don't make this roster, but he becomes really good trade value. Or who knows? Hamlers. Who the hell knows? There's players like that. You know what I'm saying? That they could become shavers, somebody who you don't think much of. Like, you know what? Might not make this roster, but you might be able to get some from him. Brandon Beane's notorious for doing that. I think to conclude here, I think MVS and La'el Collins are two relatively well-known veteran players who I think are legitimately firmly on the roster bubble right now. It would not surprise me if both make the team, and it would equally not surprise me if both of them got cut. Throw DaQuan Jones, we didn't even talk about him today, linebacker, longtime linebacker in that mix as well. Could make the team, could get cut, 3 veterans, wouldn't surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah, 100%. I fully agree. They're definitely on the bubble, and they got to do something either in training camp practices or if they play in the preseason to kind of earn one of those 53-man spots.
All right, man. So next time we talk, which hopefully will be soon, we will actually start having games that we could kind of go off with our thoughts as opposed to just, off-season speculation and a couple practices here and there at camp. It might only be preseason. I'm not going to lie, man. And we're still 3 days away as we record this. Kind of excited.
Oh yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm gearing up. We said it in the podcast that dropped today, or Wednesday, I should say, because this is coming out Thursday. Next time we talk on our show, there's actually going to be legit football to talk about. I can't wait. It's like you said to start off the show. It's one of the best times of the year.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go check out Buffalo Sports Collective. In fact, you're listening hopefully to the end of this. If you made it this far, as soon as you're done, go hit it up. Buffalo Sports Collective, their latest episode is out, of course. Follow PK on Twitter at PK_BSC, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate, like I said, you're low-key, under the radar, really good points, man.
Appreciate it. Anytime.
I'll be back, Anthony Marino. Bill's last camp practice. I will be there in Rochester, and I'll be here tomorrow to discuss it all with Anthony Marino. Talk to you guys then.